So let's have a look at the best way to play Discipline Priest. And the way that you play Discipline Priest, you have to make sure that you do this exactly the way I say it. You go and spec into Holy. Hello guys and welcome to my new video. And today, this is the week before the patch and it's going to be Grievous. Is it Grievous or Grievous? Let me know. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it wrong, but this is going to be Grievous week and a lot of people are going to try and push the highest key possible in order to get a good high key for patch 8.3, and I decided to do a Grievous healing guide for every healing spec. The first section of the video is going to be covering the general tips that's going to be applicable to every single healing spec. How to get or how to manage Grievous a bit easier, how the group can help you, and then we'll go into Resto Druid, Holy Paladin, Resto Shaman, Holy Priest, this Priest, Mistweaver Monk, and we'll talk about some of the class specific tips. So let's get started. So when looking at Grievous in terms of the generic tips for every healer to manage, first of all, Grievous is something that's going to start adding up when a person dips below 90%. They're gonna get 1 stack. If you don't get that person above 90%, they're gonna get 2nd stack and they're gonna continue until 4 stacks. The whole catch of the affix is that the more stacks you get, the harder it's going to get them above 90%, because the Grievous stack at number 4 or something is going to take a considerable amount of HP off that person. So you never want to kind of say, okay, it's only 1 stack, it's only 2 stack, I'm just gonna let them be, it's okay, it's not too bad. You want to address it instantly, and that's the tip number 1. Very preemptive type of gameplay. All of a sudden, you're going to be more vigilant about, oh hey, someone is 90% HP, they got 1 stack, I should really heal them right now. And if you healed before, or if you healed on different affixes, you'll probably be more like, okay, that person is 90%, I'm just gonna keep DPSing, I'm gonna keep doing my thing, I don't have to heal them right now. But with Grievous, you need to address it instantly, and that is the biggest issue that I see. If a person begins getting 3 or 4 stacks, you can't fall behind, and all of a sudden, you're stuck using your single target healing abilities on that person while everyone else might also be taking AoE damage, but you can't heal them because you need to make sure that person with 4 stacks gets fully topped or above 90%. So you can see how this is something that, if not addressed instantly, can become a big, huge issue. So preemptive type of gameplay. All of a sudden, you're going to be playing more defensively. You're going to be healing people when they're 90% HP. You're going to be very careful about tank HPs, because I'll talk about this later on. Certain healing classes just can't deal with tank healing that well. If all of a sudden you're doing a Mythic Plus dungeon and you invite a tank that's undergeared, and you play a class that's relatively bad at single target, it can be really, really hard. The biggest issue that I have when I do Grievous weeks on all of my healing specs every single week is that I get a tank or I play a healer that's not good at single target and I fall behind on tank healing, and all of a sudden I can't get them, I can't top them up, and if I can't top them up, I'm behind and everything becomes extremely hectic. So that's another thing that I want to talk about, group's responsibility. Don't be afraid to tell your group when you're doing these keys or these Grievous keys, bring health potion. That's one of the biggest things that, it's the biggest pet peeve of mine. If a person dies and you haven't used the health potion, it's your fault. Health potions in BfA are extremely strong. I don't know why Blizzard made them so strong, but they're so good. It can help your healer so much. So if you're a DPS or you're a tank or whatever, make sure you bring those health potions. Make sure you use them if you're at 4 stacks and you can see that the healer is really struggling. Health potion can prevent the wipe in this situation, 100%. And if you're extremely scared about Grievous, if you're a healer that's only stepping into Mythic Plus for the first time, maybe it's worth to bring these off-healing DPS specs, like Retribution Paladin. Retribution Paladin has a talent called World of Glory, which can be insanely strong if used by a good DPS person. They can legitimately carry you. It is stronger than most of the healing cooldowns out there. So if you're really scared, maybe think about bringing one of these off-healing DPS into your 5-man group. So now let's look at some of the class specific stuff, and let's look at Restoration Druid. So this is my Resto Druid, and In all fairness, Resto Druid is pretty good at dealing with Grievous. Their healing is pretty strong. The fact that a lot of your power is coming from things like Mastery. Mastery is an insanely strong, pure healing throughput stat. So during these weeks, you might consider getting a bit more Mastery. Haste is also very strong. But overall, stacking your HOTS, making sure you have as many HOTS on people as possible is going to prevent majority of Grievous stacks. That means having your rejuvenation, that means having your wild growth, that means having your regrowth, which is also going to leave a hot. That means having your efflorescence with spring blossoms, which is also going to add a hot, more healing. And a lot of the times as Resto Druid going into Grievous weeks, and you know this boss is going to output a ton of healing or a ton of damage, it's also good to play preemptively. Apply your rejuvenations before the damage comes out, or apply your rejuvenations when a person is like 95% HP or something. Just making sure you have HOTS ticking. This is going to most likely mean that your overall DPS is going to be less than other weeks. Also the fact that maybe some of your essences you can swap out. A lot of the times people will use Crucible of Flame for the DPS, but maybe you're somewhat under geared and maybe you want to go with a pure healing essence instead of Crucible of Flame. These are my essences: Crucible of Flame, Conflict and Strife, and ERT for majority of weeks out there, and it's pretty fine for me. In terms of talents, I feel you can still go with the same type of talent build with Scenario Ward, with Cultivation, Spring Blossoms, and Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is great. Make sure you use Light Bloom on yourself with Photosynthesis when there's AoE damage. When you need that single target damage, make sure you use Light Bloom, let's say on a tank, and apply all your HOTS on them. This is going to help with single target healing a lot as well. So Photosynthesis is very, very versatile. In terms of tier 15, a lot of people have different opinions about this. You can get away with Abundance. A prime example where Abundance is a really, really good choice is when you feel you're going to be using regrowths, or there's going to be a lot of AoE healing and you're going to be healing a lot of different members of the party. Things like the third boss in Temple of Satralis, Abundance becomes really strong. It not only saves you mana, but it also provides you with additional healing to the group. While Scenario Ward is the best choice for that single target healing. So if you feel the tank is going to be good in your group, and you don't need that single target healing that Scenario Ward is going to provide, because Scenario Ward is a HOT that counts towards your mastery, you can go Abundance, especially if there's going to be AoE moments. And it's also going to save you with some mana, because mana is a big issue, especially on these heavy Grievous weeks. Let's look at Shaman right now, and I should mention that if you are running out of mana, that there is a really, really good food. Sugar Crusted Fish Feasts are a really strong way of getting a lot of mana back fast, and that is used by a lot of people out there, but it kind of costs a lot of gold, because I know Grievous weeks can be mana intensive, but in terms of Resto Shaman, I think Resto Shaman is one of the most fun healers in Grievous weeks, because I don't have that many issues with it at all. And this is the kind of healing build that I run with. I do have a somewhat of a DPS build as well. I have a lot of Igneous potential. I do swap, and I do recommend a lot of people do this, because I swap a certain Azeroth piece, a headpiece that has Turn of the Tide. Turn of the Tide is probably a really, really important Azeroth trait to be used as Resto Shaman, because it's going to provide you with stronger single target healing. And again, Resto Shaman is one of those healers that does lack single target healing, but it can be complemented by certain Azeroth traits, by certain talents and things like that. And I feel Turn of the Tide is really important for majority of weeks. So my Azeroth traits would be something like this: double Igneous, and I will have at least one Turn of the Tide. A lot of the Resto Shamans might even stack more. So the way that I run my Resto Shaman in these weeks, I tend to go with double Cloudburst. Now you can go with Deluge if you want. Deluge has kind of been changed. So now if you have Riptide on your tank, or anyone who needs certain healing, your Chain Heal, Healing Wave, and Healing Surge are all going to heal for 20% more on that target. It also works with Healing Rain if the target is affected by Healing Rain, but it kind of depends on 5-man situations. But that means your single target is going to be stronger. So if your tank needs healing, Riptide, Healing Surge with Tidal Waves. That's a big, big heal right there. So your single target is buffed straight away. But I do enjoy Echoes of the Element, because you do get 2 Lava Bursts and you get 2 Cloud Bursts. I'm a huge fan of Cloud Burst in Grievous weeks. Huge fan. Mainly because I will put my Cloud Burst down, and I will be using my, my healing abilities. Maybe that maybe all of the members are taking damage, I'll use my healing rain. Healing rain has been buffed quite a lot, and all of this healing is going to be stacked up into my cloudburst. And if someone still needs some healing to get those Grievous stacks off them, cloudburst usually will do that. And a lot of the times I see this kind of playstyle where everyone in the party is, no one's taking damage except for the tank. And the tank is taking a ton of damage. They're getting 1 stack, they're getting 2 stacks, they're getting 3, 4 stacks of Grievous. And all of a sudden I can't really keep them up because again, Resto Shaman's single target healing can still be considered somewhat lackluster. But what I will do, I will use all my single target healing abilities. Maybe I'll get undulation procs as well. I'll use all of them. And I'll make sure that Cloudburst is active as well. And if I see that I'm about to get that person to 90% or very, very close to it, let's say my next healing surge, I'll use it and then I'll pop my Cloudburst instantly before it's done. I'll pop my Cloudburst so I get that healing surge and then Cloudburst over healing on top of it. And majority of the times, the tank will go above 90% if I time it correctly. Because no one else in the group is taking any damage. And I've done this multiple times to help me with single target healing on tanks with double Cloudburst build. Again, like I mentioned, you can go Deluge as well. And it's a little bit easier because you just have to put Riptide and then healing surges. But you only get 1 Cloudburst. So at most times I will always have this in back of my mind that, hey, maybe I haven't healed everybody, but Cloudburst is going to save the situation here. And that's why I feel Resto Shaman is actually a very good Grievous healer, because I had a lot of fun with my Resto Shaman. I don't run into too many issues with it, whether it will be the Echoes of the Element double Cloudburst build or whether it will be the Deluge build. I feel both of these builds can be very strong. If you stack, or at least if you get your Turn of the Tide Azeroth trade, you're also going to be in a good position. Let's look at Mistweaver, and I honestly feel Mistweaver is one of the easier Grievous weak healers, because the biggest issue with Grievous is single target healing on the tank, in my honest opinion. And I think most of the healers, actually all of the healers, are capable of healing the group and making sure they don't get too many Grievous stacks. But certain healers have issues with single target healing, and a lot of the times the tank might dip to 4 stacks and then that's GG. You're playing catch up all the time. With Mistweaver, Mistweaver has one of the best single target healing capabilities. You have Jade Serpent Statue, which is one of the most popular talents to use in 5-mans. And you can use this whole Soothing Mist, Enveloping Mist, Vivify combo. And all of a sudden I feel with Mistweaver, you can carry the tank. You can join a group where the tank is undergeared or maybe not using their cooldowns properly, maybe taking too much damage. You can carry them as a Mistweaver. So I feel very confident when I'm joining any group out there that, hey, I don't care what's your gear, I'm gonna help you out. Mistweavers are so good at that single target healing because of the whole Enveloping Mist and how it interacts with Vivifies. I tend to go with Wave the Crane on fortified weeks because I feel Wave the Crane can be very good with fortified weeks. That's the reason why I use Mana Tea, because Wave the Crane without Mana Tea is gonna cost 25,000 mana. And I feel that's pretty expensive to use outside of Mana Tea. So every time I will try to combine my Mana Tea, and then I'll use my Wave the Crane, and then spin to win. Or we're gonna spin to win. And this seems to work pretty well, especially on fortified weeks in terms of AoE healing. And a lot of people don't know about this about Mistweavers, but Essence Font, make sure you track the Essence Font hot. If you cast any Vivify, Enveloping Mist, anything, if you cast any heals on those targets, Mastery is proccing twice. You get a free heal out of it. And it's gonna help you out a lot. Single target healing, Statue is great. Soothing Mist, Enveloping Mist, Vivify. You should not have any issues as a Mistweaver monk on Grievous weeks, at least in my honest opinion. Let's talk about Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin can be very decent healer when dealing with Grievous. But again, the whole gameplay of Holy Paladin revolves around your cooldowns. And if you misjudge or misuse your cooldowns, you're gonna be in a big trouble. A lot of the times, the 5-man style gameplay for Holy Paladin is going to be revolving around Critical Strike and using Infusion of Light procs properly, because guess what? If you use your Holy Avenger, if you use your wings, you're gonna be one of the best healers in the world, and you can do a lot of healing. No one's gonna get those Grievous stacks. No one's gonna fall in trouble. You're gonna be doing tons of damage, tons of healing, and you're just a god. But what happens after those cooldowns are over? That's where you're gonna be running into issues. If all of a sudden the tank says, hey, we're gonna do a huge pull, and you're like, hey, I just used all my cooldowns. this is where you have to kind of play defensive and make sure that, again, a lot of people with Holy Paladin will use a lot more crit than I have. They'll try and stack a lot more crit, because guess what happens? You'll have a higher chance every time you use your Holy Shock. You see, I didn't get it. You'll have a higher chance every time you use Holy Shock for Holy Shock to crit, and if your Holy Shock crits, you'll get Infusion of Light. Infusion of Light is going to reduce the cast time of your Holy Light by a certain amount, or increase the healing of your next flash of light, which is really, really strong. So basically, this is how Holy Paladins play Mythic Plus. They use the cooldowns when the group really needs them. They're the best healers during cooldowns, and when they don't have cooldowns, they try to stack a bit more crit in order to get Infusion of Light every time they Holy Shock, if Holy Shock crits. And this is going to help them a lot. In terms of talent choices, I feel this is going to be used a lot of the times. You can go to Unbreakable Spirit if you want, instead of Root of Law. But Divine Purpose, I still feel, is a very, very strong choice if you're that Glimmer of Light Holy Paladin, if you have 3 Glimmers as well, and your Divine Purpose procs are going to be pretty good. And in Grievous, I feel you still have, you have Lay of Hands, if that is really, really necessary to top up your tank or to help with tank healing. I feel you can't run into single target healing issues when you don't have your cooldowns. If you look at bosses like, for example, Wakerest Manor, the Witches, if you're doing a high Tyrannical Key or something like that with Grievous, there's a lot of AoE healing needed. You might try and separate your cooldowns. Maybe you'll use your Wings first, and then after Wings are over, maybe you use your Holy Avenger. And you'll try and have every single second of that boss with some sort of a cooldown. Not a lot of people might do that. A lot of the times, Holy Paladins will just use the cooldowns together to have a super cooldown. But in Mythic Plus, I feel, especially during these Grievous weeks, especially during bosses that are really, really healing intensive, that it might be worth to try and separate your cooldowns, to make sure that you have a cooldown for every second of that boss, because there's so much healing needed. So this is determined boss per boss. So it depends what Mythic Plus you're doing and things like that, and what your group is like and things like that. But overall, Holy Paladin can be insanely strong, but outside of cooldowns, you probably will need some help, or you might have to play a little bit more defensive. As a Discipline Priest on Grievous weeks, it can be really tough, especially if a tank is under geared. And I feel in general, single target healing from Discipline Priest is relatively low. Now, don't get me wrong, there are Azeroth traits you can use to help with that, like Depth of Shadows, and a lot of people will use it. Very much like Resto Shaman might be considered to be somewhat weak on that single target, and they'll use Turn the Tide. So you can see that there are solutions to this problem, but in general, if you are trying to carry a tank that's under geared as a Discipline Priest, you're gonna have a bad time, at least in my opinion. So let's talk about the ways to try and help you with Grievous healing as Discipline Priest. First, let's look at some of the essences. My essences on this character are just GG. I only have 2 essences available, so I don't have a whole lot of choice. Overall, I feel Holy Priest and Discipline Priest might get a good use out of Well of Existence. Well of Existence Major. So if you do have Well of Existence, all of your overhealing is kind of stored up in this, and then you have the single target healing ability. And this might help you a lot as a Discipline Priest when you need that single target. So if you do have Well of Existence, it might be a very good choice on these Grievous weeks. Overall, let's look at some of the talent choices for Discipline Priest. And this is the default talent choice for Disc going into any Mythic Plus week, kind of. Or there's going to be 2 additions made for Grievous Discipline Priest. And that is Twist of Fate, All of a Sudden Schism, one of the most fun abilities in my opinion. You're going to go Twist of Fate. And if someone falls below 35% HP, which means they already have too many Grievous stacks, it will help you with your healing. So Twist of Fate for the extra help, and Shadow Covenant. Now keep in mind, Shadow Covenant leaves an absorb on the targets used. So technically you kind of want to time it in a way that, let's say your targets or your party is at 2 or 3 stacks, but they're all around like 80% HP. Yeah, you can use Shadow Covenant in order to get them above 90% HP. So all of a sudden, even though there is an absorb applied after Shadow Covenant, you don't need to heal them because you passed this threshold of healing past Grievous stacks. The healing playstyle of this is going to be, again, it can be very defensive. You might be using your healing cooldowns, and this actually applies to everybody. You might be using your healing cooldowns when it's not that bad, when you probably wouldn't have used them before. Maybe people are only like 70% HP and you want to use your healing cooldown now because it's better to stop Grievous at like 1 or 2 stacks rather than let it build into 3 and 4, where it gets extremely hard. So everything's going to be preemptive. You want to be really careful. And overall, I feel Discipline can have one of the hardest times depending on your tank. If you swap over to Holy, I feel there's a direct advantage of Holy Priest in Grievous weeks, and that is mainly to do with Holy Word Serenity, which is a big single target heal, and you can have it, again, it's 1 minute cooldown, but if you play Holy Priest, you know the way the Holy Word spells work, your filler abilities will reduce the cooldown. So all of a sudden, you do have this strong single target heal that's gonna help you with the biggest issue that priests have, single target. And if you combine that with Well of Existence Essence as well, all of a sudden you'll have these 2 strong single target heals available at your disposal. And in terms of the talents, honestly, you can go a lot of different routes here. Again, I feel to some extent that Light of the Naru can be a very solid choice if you feel you need those Holy Word spells quicker. A lot of the Holy Priests might be using Light of the Naru in things like Bursting. During Bursting, you might need AoE healing or your other Holy Word spells available more often, and I feel Light of the Naru can be a good choice. If you don't need Light of the Naru, if you don't want to use it, Apotheosis is good as well. So overall, I feel Holy Priest AoE healing is going to be fine. A lot of your healing is coming from Mastery, because you know most of your heals will leave a hot on a target. But on top of that, you also have those single target options with Serenity, maybe Well of Existence, and I feel Holy Priest can be a good choice for these Grievous weeks, especially if you're not comfortable with Discipline Priest, or if you're struggling with some of the Discipline Priest Grievous mechanics. Holy can be a good choice to try out during this week. In general, if you are attempting this Mythic Plus Grievous affix, be preemptive. Always try to get that 1 stack off a person. Don't let it build up, and be very careful if you're playing these healers that are not that great at single target, to bring a tank that's gonna help you out, to bring a tank that's not under geared. Health potions are so good. Guys, let me know how you feel about this video. If you have any tips that I missed out on, leave them in the comment section below. It'll help out the people who watch this video. Guys, thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe and all that things. It helps me to make these type of videos, and I'll see you in my next guide.